clips of the European Parliament at work, and it's a complete monkey house, just like the Commons is. I mean, if you listen to parliamentary question time and you hear the hissing and booing and guffawing, you've got to ask yourself, where is the respect and structure, and where is the possibility of doing anything at all constructive? And for instance, monkey tribes only work because, as you said, there is a hierarchy and structure, and so. But
that hierarchy is constantly being challenged, and that's no different to what happened to Theresa May. Her position of hierarchy was challenged.
Yeah, but they are monkeys after all, okay, and that's why they stay as they are. And for instance, if you put one monkey and one human on a desert island, you can bet your bottom dollar the monkey's going to do much better than the human. If you put a group of monkeys and a group of humans on the desert island, the humans will do better because they can cooperate better. But if they become no better than monkeys, then of course they lose their survival advantage.
Well, wasn't that very Lord of the Flies, though?
But it's also unfortunately true.
Yeah, because the thing is, it still comes down to the very Darwinian theory that the strongest will survive.
Well, you see, the thing is, where the whole human species, as you quite correctly said, devolving, and that's because every single civilization that has existed on this planet has risen and fallen. And now it's our turn to rise, and we're almost certainly on the way down, and we are devolving. For instance, for anything to develop in a meaningful fashion, you need a very strong structure and hierarchy. And if you watch every single civilization, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, the Genghis Khan, the Muslims,
the British Empire,
the British Empire. It's all based on very strict structure, hierarchy, military, use of cheap labor, and it's all based on fear. The more fear you have, the more hungry you are, then the more you're going to stick to your structure. The less fear you have, then the less you'll stick to your structure. It's why females are more compliant than males, because on the whole, females are more anxious than males, so they're more compliant at school, they're more compliant at work. Now, the less fear you have, and you could translate this into a society which is more successful, the more successful society is, the less fear and hunger it has, and therefore the less it sticks to a structure. And you can see this over the millennia, where you have languages that are developed, and now languages are devolving. It's becoming, the English language and many other languages are becoming a mush. You can look at art, which evolved in classic art, and then it starts devolving in impressionism and now anything goes. Music is the same thing. You have incredibly structured classical music, classical Indian music, piano concertos, pop music, and then suddenly anything goes, where you can bang on a dustbin lid and make that some kind of accepted music.
But hold on a second. But not all that is marketable. Remember, if the market doesn't like it, the market's not going to buy it, and therefore that'll drop off the face of the earth eventually.
Yeah, because what we're looking at is instant gratification. So whenever you sink into instant gratification, it's just like the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans, that the last dying breaths of those empires were marked by orgies and debauchery. So.
Hold on a second. Didn't the Romans look to curb that at some point in terms of? I know there was a lot of eroticism in terms of some of the. Some of their, I suppose, art is the best way to get in, art and sculptures and even behaviours. But I think there was a point during the Roman Empire that they realised it was actually also getting out of control.
Well, indeed so.
And they look to sort of stamp it out. Same, I suppose, during Queen Victoria as well, didn't it? Because we were quite a debaucherous society before Queen Victoria's era.
But look what's happening now. The same thing. So they're trying to bring in more controls. So whether it's sugar taxes, whether they're going to start controlling the internet. You see, humans cannot self-regulate, and and one of the key regulatory factors for a human is fear and guidance from that. And if you remove that, then you get complete chaos. And that's exactly what's happening to today's society. It's just a mirror image of what's happened in every single civilization.
Yeah, but you know something?
Political correctness is a symptom.
But it's and this, actually bring up an interesting point here in terms of control. When you give so much power to the state to control us, they're actually guiding us in the direction that they want us to go, not where we want to go. Now, it's your choice to put sugar in your mouth. It's your choice to actually put a great big fried cheeseburger in your mouth. And the thing is, but when you actually take the power away from people of making their own choices and holding themselves accountable and teaching them to become more self-reliant, they can then actually make, but by doing that, you actually help them make to make the choices, and probably better choices. Some of them aren't. Some of them are going to be fairly.
But you're proving
for more vulnerable.
Proof of the pudding is in the result. Look at the epidemic of obesity. People are not capable. People are dying from cancer from smoking. As soon as smoking was made illegal, and this, that, and the other, emancipation of ladies. What's happening with women? Women are beginning to close the gap. They're dying younger because they're now indulging in the excesses that were seen to be the male prerogative. Humans are not capable of rational, consistent decision making.
I don't think you're giving enough credit to humans, but
they need leadership. They need leader. For instance, even...
No, it depends what type of leader. Again...
democracy finished off ancient Greece.
Hold on a second. Again... Oh, you throw me here. I've lost what I was going to say.
Do you see, democracy finished off ancient Greece? Did you know that? And indeed, Socrates was against democracy because and again, I forget who was, Aristotle or something, but they said that unless you can hear your voice from one end of the city to the other, democracy will never ever work. And indeed, in Athens, the democracy was based on the fact that everyone got together on a plateau and they could hear each other speak and then discuss things. And the idea that the vote was given to every single person, the good and the poor, as they called it. The fact is that the average person, unless they are in the thick of it and things are spoon-fed to them, they're not going to be able to understand things.
But actually that's what it is. You're actually spoon-feeding them sugar. You're spoon-feeding them things.
That's the trouble.
You're spoon-feeding them what the most powerful companies allow them to do. And I'm sounding almost sort of anti-wealth here. I'm not. But the thing is, but I believe in choice. But the thing is, if you're spoon-feeding... Now, I'm not saying that cannabis is the best solution, but and this may even be a poor example. But the thing is, if cannabis is a medical resource that is available, and you're banning it because the pharmaceutical industries don't want you to do it, or the plastic manufacturers wanted to make plastic rope as opposed to hemp, for example, they have the power to then influence the government to make a decision, not for the best of the people, but for the best of these big organisations to make the money. And it's probably worse in America, where lobbying is far stronger than it is over here. Because let's face it, you got this whole gun issue. Second Amendment is everyone has the right to bear arms in the States. Now, with the amount of school shootings and everything that are over here, it just makes totally logical sense that you can actually ban guns. But the thing is, who doesn't want them to ban guns? It's the gun manufacturers and the gun industry, because it would leave such a big hole in the American economy. I mean, let's face it. I think it's illegal to buy a vibrator in Texas or something's weird like that.
But you can buy a shotgun.
But you can buy a shotgun at the age of about 12 years old or something. I can't process that. I can't compute that.
But you see, there isn't an epidemic of everyone murdering each other by shooting, is there?
No, but the thing is, it doesn't make sense to actually have such lax gun laws over there. The thing is, you can't get a driving license again until you are a certain age. You can't buy certain things until you're, but you can actually buy something that can go and kill somebody else.
So, relatively speaking, there is an illogicality.
Of course there is. But the thing is, why? Because it comes down to money, and the politicians are influenced. As I said, they're not making decisions what's best for the country. They're making decisions what's actually best for themselves.
Which is why democracy doesn't work. democracy finished off ancient Athens.
But you never provided another option.
It's where you need you need someone who is schooled in leading. So, for instance, the people like Alexander the Great, who were schooled and taught by the best possible minds, and taught how to lead, and taught about people and.
So, you think we should go back to sovereignty then?
Sorry,
we should go back to a sovereign-led country, a realm.
It would have to be a little bit more sophisticated than that. But actually, if you think about it, those are the type of leadership which actually led to success of the Western world.
Sorry?
That's the type of leadership that led to the success of the Western world. Ever since, if you think about it, ever since there's been a House of Commons and things like that, we've been going downhill, if we're brutally honest about it. The rise of civilizations and greatness has been sovereign-led.
The thing is, the House of Commons has the ability to actually be able to step in when king or queen, I suppose, gets out of control, which is what happened with Charles. Was it Charles I or Charles II? I can't remember this. I can't remember which one at this point in time.
But think about it.
Oliver Cromwell came in and won the English Civil War. But the thing is, they then put a king. Actually, I think they put his son in, after he died. So they actually understood that level of hierarchy, I suppose, was important. But the government had the power to actually have a little bit more control to actually hold the realm accountable.
But you see, the difficulty is that you can't just be sovereign-led because a king, by definition, if it's simply done by genetics and birthright, you're going to have people of varying ability and let's face it, varying sanity. So it needs to be a lot more sophisticated than that.
The thing is, you brought up Alexander the Great, which is fine. I mean, he's an exception to the rule. But how do you know from such a young age that the person you're grooming is actually going to be able to, who's actually going to mature and actually turn into the person who can live up to that role?
You don't, which is why if you think about it, the legal systems in different countries do vary. I'll give you an example. So, for instance, in the UK, you have a single judge, and everyone knows that the legal system is defective, and it depends on the mood of the judge. It depends on the knowledge and ability of the judge, and that's why solicitors will tell you quite freely. It's not on the case doesn't depend on the truth. It depends on how good you are at persuading the judge or the jury. What's the jury? They say true and good people. Well, actually, they're usually people who can't really understand what's going on. If you look at Turkey, for instance, it's not usually one judge; it's 3 judges. So they're less likely to be, they're less likely to be dependent on the mood and whim of one person.
Well, actually, that can be just as bad as the one judge, though.
Because you've got the crowd mentality in a way.
One is crowd mentality. 2, you're doing it in your own self-interest, because the thing is, there's still your position to consider if you actually want to replace a top judge, because there'll always be one top judge to make the final decision. There'll be different dynamics involved. One will be the most dominant one. He'll be influenced. One wants to be more likable, more liked by the other, so he'll make the decision to actually be more compliant.
Look at what the army do. They have things like Sandhurst. So they have officer training, and therefore to lead an army, and let's face it, throughout civilization, it's armies who've led to the rise and the development of civilizations. Then perhaps we need a school of leaders, and we need to then be streaming and looking at people's aptitude. So I think that's where we need to be heading.
Oh, it's very different being a leader and being a bully in the playground. I mean, because it's very hard to differentiate from that is at such a young age sometimes. You may see traits, and they may actually be able to go find some talent identification programs that allows them to do that. But even so, you're not giving the opportunity to someone else to be able to actually reach that role just because they actually haven't had the upbringing. Because eventually it will come down to your social class in some cases.
Okay, but
Yeah.
the bottom line is
because if you think, because there was a thing in the article, there was an article in the newspaper, I think it was on the BBC website the other day, that Oxford and Cambridge, from who they recruit, 33% of their recruitment